If you're someone who struggles with debt or feels trapped by the paycheck to paycheck life, then you are really going to appreciate the conversation that I had with Dr. Veronica Hardy, especially if you're a social worker. I know a lot of messaging in social work is that financial struggle is a requirement, which is the exact opposite of what we preach on this channel. But Dr. Hardy is a living embodiment of what a thriving social worker can actually look like. One of the things that attracted me to her was her eclectic social work interests. She's worked in clinical settings, she's worked in social justice, she's been a tenured university professor, she's the founder of the Social Work Lounge Facebook community, she's a podcast host, she's a series contributor for the New Social Worker magazine. She's also a keynote speaker, a writer, a social work mentor, and author of 5 books so far. Her most recent book, Let's Talk About Finances, is a roadmap to financial wellness specifically written for social work students and graduates. And in this conversation, she breaks down practical steps that anybody can take to build their financial literacy and get out of debt. I got the book. It's really good. You should get it too. All right. Are you ready to get schooled by Dr. Hardy and get your entire financial life on track? Hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already for more rich content like this. Here we go. Veronica, so excited to have you on the channel. Thank you so much for agreeing to be here.
So I'm excited. I was excited from our phone call and I'm just thankful for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And what really got me excited was, first of all, I'm not very great on LinkedIn yet, something I'm working on. And because I'm working on being more visible on LinkedIn, I had logged on and you had a post that caught my eye. And to be honest, I'm not sure if you posted it or if someone else posted it, but you had written a book for social workers about finances. And I was like, ooh, all of my viewers, anybody that knows me knows money and social work. If you talk about those two things together, you've got my attention. And I'm so glad you wrote this book so I didn't have to. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
First question is, tell us about this book and what gave you the inspiration to write it.
Oh, great first question. And also I'm great we crossed paths on LinkedIn for sure. What inspired me to write this book? I'm currently a professor at a university. And prior to that, I was already focusing on finances in my own life and the lives of people that I know. And I believe in a debt-free lifestyle. So I push towards that. So I am debt-free. And that's important to me. But what I found is with social workers, many of us are not experiencing that debt-free lifestyle. Many are experiencing the struggle with finances. And so one of my colleagues noticed that I was mainly writing blogs and speaking about finances. So she asked me to speak to a group of students who recently were awarded a scholarship. So I put a presentation together about financial wellness. And after I presented to them, I said, you know what? I'm going to turn this into a book. So I took the presentation and turned that into a book and just built upon it. But I thought we need to teach our students early, before they get the degree, before the debt comes, before the, why did I do this? How did I end up like this comes in? Let me try to get them while they're students. And so as they're going through their education, they could be making strong financial decisions. So that was kind of what inspired me and the root of that book.
Love it. And you said something, you said you believe in being debt-free. As I started to dig into this world of money and finances, I realized this is a whole other universe. When you start to talk about money, there's so many things you could talk about. You could talk about budgeting. You could talk about being debt-free. You could talk about creating wealth. You could talk about assets and things like that. So you just said debt-free. And I don't know that we've dug into that on this channel before. So could you please talk about your philosophy about it, like why you feel that's so important, what that actually means, and how it connects? I know this is a lot of questions, but how it connects to being well for ourselves.
When it comes to debt-free for me, I've been debt-free twice in my life, or maybe when I was a child, of course I was debt-free, but in my adult life, this is the second time I've been debt-free. Of course, we're accumulating debt through our degrees, if we're renting an apartment, purchasing a house, getting our vehicles, and just the daily bills and such. But then I strive towards I don't want to carry this anymore. I don't want to pay interest. I don't want to keep accumulating. I want to own. I want to have assets. I want to have resources. And when I have those assets and resources, and I organize them in a way that's in alignment with who I am spiritually and who I want to be within my community, and in ways that honor my family and my family name, that debt-free piece is important to me. And being able to contribute to the lives of others is also important to me. So when I'm carrying a lot of debt, it's as if it blocks me from being who I fully want to be, to my community, to my family, and who I want to be spiritually. So that's kind of how I've organized my life. And a story I open up my book with is when I first started learning about finances, and many of us, it may not have been talked about verbally when we were growing up or as kids, but we may have observed it all around us, how money is handled, how debt accumulates, systems in the world that may oppress people and put them in positions of debt and not being able to grow financially like they would like to be. But I often share the story of my father. Once a month, he'd take all the receipts, go upstairs, have his notebook, sit at his desk, organizing the finances. And he was just in his space. And just that little memory taught me about paying attention to how you use your finances, because your finances are actually a tool. They're a tool that support you in navigating this life. So I have my mother and my father. They have 4 kids, migrated from the South to the North. So they had to use that tool, especially during that time period that they were in, to manage their family and nurture and take care of their family. So I honor them with that. And I practice what I have observed in them. And now it's, well, I want to pass that on to other people as well.
I bought your book. And there's something I wanted to highlight, but you've highlighted it a few times in this conversation already, and that is your connection, your spiritual walk and relationship. There's so many things that you've already said that I want to highlight, but I definitely don't want to forget this. And what's interesting to me for this conversation for my social workers is understanding how everything matters, right? Your finances, your relationship with others, your spirituality, however you define that, your values, like it all matters. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times, especially social workers, we focus on the good that we're doing in the community or to others. And we are kind of left to our own devices to figure out the financial piece, right, and the spiritual piece sometimes, because, we don't want to, that's not something that we talk about or do. We don't want to influence our clients with our own biases, and we get that. But I think sometimes many times we forget, or we just don't understand how to align everything together. And so we don't pay attention to money or spiritual things. And like you, I've found that this has been such a spiritual journey, the money part of things. Mm-hmm. So I'd love for you to share from your perspective why that spiritual piece matters so much to you, especially when you're talking about finances.
So I would say, just in regards to my spirituality and my finances, so I identify as Christian, and there are just so many scriptures that I tend to pull on when it comes to organizing my life. Mm-hmm. And just all throughout the Old Testament, when I read it, I just read about order. I read about assets and resources and how they're organized in a certain way and planned for your future, or to help you prepare for your future when difficult times come, when good times come. So I said, I need to be prepared in the same ways. And at times when I'm carrying debt, I don't feel like I'm prepared like I need to be. What if something happens to the house, or what if something happens to my health? Am I prepared for things that are coming? And that's part of that spiritual wisdom. At the same time, store up your finances, your assets, your resources in a certain way where they will be accessible for you, because times of need they're always going to come. We're in a pandemic now. This is a heavy time of need. In the area I've been in, there have been 2 hurricanes so far. Many homes were flooded. Our areas were flooded. There are things that are going to come that we need to be prepared for, and organizing our resources so we can be prepared. So oftentimes I think along those lines, but I also love living a life of peace and a life of order. And when we're overwhelmed by finances or are uncertain of how to navigate our finances, or even don't even realize how our finances affect us emotionally, because it's a heavy weight sometimes when we're not making as much money as we need for the bills to be paid. That weighs on us emotionally. So I think of it as an aspect of self-care, wellness, taking care of me, being able to take care of my family. So those are just some of the ways that it all comes together and ties in for me regarding my spirituality, and then just my life, my mental health as a whole.
So many good gems here, because I imagine the social worker that's listening to this is wanting to understand still, like, okay, so what do I do then to be, debt free? And yeah, I am stressed because I do have this student debt, plus I have my finals to take, but I can't take my finals until this balance is paid, and I have maybe childcare, or I'm in the middle of whatever life, right? I'm in the middle of life.
Right.
So what do they do? And I know you mentioned assets, and you created several assets. So can you talk a little bit about that journey to be debt free? Because you said this is the second time you've been debt free in your life. What's that journey been?
I know the very first time, I had graduated, I did my bachelor's, I did my master's. So now I was working in different, say, residential treatment facilities and such. And I made a decision. I wanted to transition into entrepreneurship at the time. But I thought, when you transition, you have to do it strategically. You have to plan it out accordingly. So I was working full time, and I decided to work part-time as well for a group practice. So as I was working both jobs were fulfilling to me. They were in alignment with what I like to do. I like to counsel. I like to advise. I'd like to kind of nurture other people and help support them as they navigate their lives. And I told myself, okay, before you can transition into entrepreneurship, you have to pay everything off, so that way you have a clean slate. And my mind at the time was, just in case it doesn't work out, you have a clean slate. So even if you just need to run out and get a part-time job, you'll still be okay. So I was able to work the full-time and the part-time and just be organized in a way to pay everything off, which was the car and the master's degree debt, and at the same time observe how I was spending my money. It's always 2 parts: how much money you're bringing in, how much money needs to go out, and then what ways are you just spending your money, whether it's clothes, whether it's apps, things such as that. And I made adjustments to how I was spending my money, things that I had a lot of choice and power over. And it took a little bit of time, but I was able to pay all those things off and give myself a clean slate. And the amount of time it'll take is different for everybody based on our lives. You mentioned earlier, there's childcare. We may have medical experiences that we're responding to. So it's different for everybody. That's something else I would say. Don't compare your journey to anybody else's, because we're all under different, whether it's pressures, whether it's enjoyments, whatever it may be. So that's one thing I did. I made my decision. I want to pay this off, and this is what I'm going to do to pay it off. Sometimes you need to bring in that second job, or that side hustle, as we call it. And I know now there's a virtual world. Back then, there wasn't. There wasn't all the internet and cell phones as heavy as it is now. So it's about making that decision. What do I want my future to be? What do I want my finances to look like? So I always tell people, start with a decision. And that decision is often the vision, what you want it to be. And now here are the steps I need to organize to get to that vision.
I love that so much. Since I learned this word, not that I learned it, but since I learned to use it, this word intentional.
Yes.
But that's what you're talking about, right?
Yes.
And I love the word decision, but I like the word intentional, because it means you've got to focus on this thing, right? Because, we have to make decisions every day. But when you're intentional, it means that, okay, you got to like reverse engineer what are the steps, like, you have to really put some thought into this. Set aside time, maybe buy a journal, maybe get a mentor, do these things that you haven't done in the past. I know you are a mentor, and you call yourself a mentor, and you even have a degree in like mentorship. Not really, it doesn't say mentorship, but you have a degree that aligns with mentorship. What is that?
Yes, as my doctorate's in counselor education and supervision.
And so, yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So when you mentor students or others, people, because I know you have a business as well. So when you mentor people, are these some of the things that you talk about? Like, what comes up?
Yes.
That you can share.
Awesome. So what comes up is where they want to be. That's number one, because oftentimes if people come to me, this is where I want to be, but I don't know how to get there, or I feel stuck. That word stuck comes up a lot. So where they want to be, the feelings of stuckness, how they got into this place, this position of where they are now, and then how do I kind of jump over this hurdle? At times when it comes to mentorship, it's all about this hurdle, this here and now that feels like it's in the way. And what I found is that many people feel like they don't have a person in their lives or a person in position to help them get through this phase. They've had many people help them, support them get through the previous phases, but now right here, gosh, I don't seem to have anyone around me to help me with this. And then that's when the call or the contact through my website comes in of, okay, let me start reaching out for some of that mentorship support to just get me through here. And then, so those are some of the primary issues that come up. Again, they have a vision, they know what they're experiencing inside, they know what they're drawn to, but feel like I just need someone to kind of walk alongside me so I can figure out this step.
Your people that come to you have a vision. I often encounter social workers that don't actually know where they want to go, or a lot of times the challenge is they don't know the possibilities of where they could go. Do you have that experience as well?
Now, I feel like I have that more with my students who are, either nearing their graduation or have just graduated. So they're very fresh and may not have an idea of everything they can do. Because when I interact with them in class, I can see them. I can see their strengths. I can see their skills just popping out and flourishing. But I know because I have more years in it, I have a longer road I can see it differently than how they can see it. So I'm able to speak and say, look, you ever think about corporate social work? Or have you ever think about policy? We have social workers who are senators too. You're not limited to certain of these roles that are listed in the textbook. There is so much more that you can do out there. So to come back to your point, I think the life stage makes a big difference, because I think that many of the people who I mentor may be mid to late 30s, 40s, around that age. And then my students, I can see some of those questions of, well, how do I interpret what I learned into, the work world, or what other roles can I fill? So that's some of the difference. I think the life stage, now that you brought that up, has a big difference in the types of questions that are asked.
That is true. Now, we're kind of leaning into the conversation about finding a niche, because that's something that I talk about a lot within the context of finding a business niche and using your skills and natural abilities and your social work training and your passions to align with a specific area of entrepreneurship or coaching specifically. In my world, right? But you've just brought up a few additional niches. So corporate social work, policy, things like that. Talk to us, because again, when I kind of looked at your profile, if I were to say a niche, it would be it would be leadership.
Okay.
But but there are so many different facets to that. So I know that's something you talk about in your book as well. Can you talk about it?
Now, I know for so many people, just figuring out their niche is so hard. And sometimes it feels like we're under pressure to figure it out. Just like when students are starting college in their freshman year, I have to pick a major, but they're just not able to feel connected to anything yet. So oftentimes, I know some people ask the question of, what is that one thing that you would do for free if you weren't even paid for it? And sometimes I'll go even deeper with, well, what are the activities you like to do? What are your stress relievers? What type of art or nature could you stare at all day and just be perfectly fine? What type of entertainment do you like to engage in? What relaxes you? I try to dig into more of those internal, psychological, emotional aspects of a person. And when I've looked at my niche, like you said, that leadership, and I think the counsel, the advisement, and when I look over my life, it has always been the same. I just express it creatively in the professional world different ways, whether it's through the writing, whether it's through the teaching, whether it's through podcasting or creating the YouTube videos, but I'm doing, it's all the same thing. It's all still counsel. It's all still advisement. So I encourage people to reflect on some of those personal questions. What are they consistently drawn to that brings them joy? And if they lost it, it would feel like they're losing their breath of life. All right. They would still feel like they're in search of it. So some of those, again, it goes back to some of those spiritual questions, those emotional questions. What seems fulfilling? What seems joyful to you? And then how can you translate that into your career world? And if it was gone, how would that feel? If it would feel like a significant loss from your life, that says a lot.
So once they have a niche, or, I always just let people know, like, hey, it's going to change. It's going to morph as you change and grow and have different experiences. But I think what's still fundamental, right, for social workers, for the audience to know, is how to, be intentional, how to take steps. Then, once you do have that niche, then what? So that you can be financially free, or be on this financial wellness journey. So can you talk about what those steps might be, or what advice you would give someone watching this so that they can be debt free?
I love it. And I like that you've been using that word intentional, because that was it's like each year I try to use a word. So last year, intentional was just my word all year long, that I had to focus on something and let that something drive me. I had to work towards it every single day. So that's where I'm going to start. If we want to move towards financial wellness, I would say one of the first steps is to be intentional. We have to make up our mind, and you have to set an aim, that target that you want to move towards. So I would tell people, identify that one thing. What is going to be at least one aim that you want to work towards to build your financial wellness?
Give us an example.
Yes. So for some, saying, okay, paying off all my debt may be too much. Maybe it's just starting to learn about it, financial literacy, or learning where my financial habits have come from. You mentioned about my book, Let's Talk About Finances. One of the first things I have people do is to explore their financial narrative, their financial story. Where did their understanding about finances start? Oftentimes it's in childhood, it's through those observations. Many may have had great experiences, others may have experienced trauma, experiences of poverty, experiences of natural disasters and loss. And that affects us in the long term about how we handle our finances. So that can be one example where you start exploring your financial narrative. Someone else may want a different focus, such as, how do I diversify my skills? So I'll be more marketable out there. So that person might start exploring what's available in their community. Is there a mentor that I can connect with to start building my skills, to start building my knowledge and learning how I can use it? Are there certificate programs that I can register for and take those classes? Something I often recommend to people is to build your business skills too. And I know here, I'm in North Carolina, and many of our community colleges have what's called a small business center that offers free webinars on whether it's grant writing, starting nonprofit organizations. So seeing what's in your community that may also be free. So again, those are 3 ways or 3 examples. Some people might want to pay off their debt. Some want to understand why they're in debt, or others may want to start building their skills. But whatever it is, the thought is be intentional, set that aim. This is what I want to work on right now. So now I have the idea. So what would the step number 2 be? Challenges come, right? So what I'll tell people too is, like, your step number 2 is to jot down what possible obstacles or challenges might be able to come your way. What's the power of that? Because when you know it can come, what do? You prepare for it.
Absolutely.
Okay, exactly. So to me, that builds a sense of empowerment. It decreases that element of surprise, and it builds your ability to have control when situations come. So if this is my aim, this is my intention, these are possible obstacles that could come, or they're obstacles that came before, write them down. Then when you write those down, write what your plan is to confront them if they do come. Put your plan in place. I say in life, obstacles are going to come. Challenges are going to come. The unexpected is going to come. Now, when it comes, what's my plan going to be? It's better to be prepared. Another step is to do something every single day to move you towards your intention. One recommendation I have in the book is, even if many people, their schedules are so full. When I think of my students, amazing. They're parents, they're spouses, they're working full time, and they're running to classes at night. They're amazing, right? So they may only have 10 minutes a day to put towards their intention. And that 10 minutes is okay. Remember earlier I said, don't compare your journey to anyone else's. If 10 minutes fits into your life and keeps all these other areas of your life going, perfect. So that 10 minutes a day could go towards reading, studying, tuning into videos such as Rich Social Worker, to fill yourself with that financial literacy and financial wellness knowledge, or engaging with the mentor. Again, signing up for the webinars, looking up something that can enhance your life and your skills. And then, of course, accountability partners. That's helpful. And that could be someone in your family, someone in your household. And again, it could be someone who wants to be on a financial wellness journey too, to help encourage you. You can share your experiences, they can share theirs, and you all can lift each other up and then keep moving forward. So those are some of the steps that I recommend, but doing it daily. Just like exercise, if we miss a day of exercise, next thing we know, we give ourselves permission to not exercise the next day. Mm-hmm. So trying to do it consistently according to your life and according to your schedule.
You know, I was listening to you and kind of going through the process that I went through, and I was so ready to be out of debt and to stop making poor financial choices, because I didn't understand, right, what the dynamics were and the choices I was making. I did all of those things at the same time, and really kind of threw myself into just understanding, you know, what was the history and the upbringing, and you know, getting over money shame, which is a whole other topic and conversation. Just getting into the habit of checking my bank account and just finding other people, because if you're not aware, if everybody else around you is broke or is in debt and doesn't understand this information, then how do you find people that you can associate with? So just learning that. And I remember just doing all the things at the same time, just because I was so committed. Now, you know, when I coach people, I don't tell them to do that because it is a lot. They probably don't have the same amount of time, but all of those things that you mentioned, I just want to co-sign on all of those things, because you're absolutely right. Last question.
Yes.
What does being a rich social worker mean to you? You're on Rich Social Worker. And so thank you for being here. Tell us.
I will say, you know, originally when I was preparing for our conversation today, I set up outside. I set up outside on the porch. I love nature. I love beauty. I love the peace. I love the quiet. And I was thinking, gosh, this is what it is. This is what wealth is. This is what being a rich social worker means to me. It's having navigated my finances in a way that it results in things that are honorable and things that make me happy and that are fulfilling and where I can contribute back to others. Oh, and peace, that's my word, peace. That's what it is to me. And that's how it contributes to my life and my wellness. So that's definitely what my answer would be.
Love that so much. And you know, it definitely is my intention to help social workers prioritize themselves and their financial wellness so that they can give back.
Exactly.
And so that they don't feel deprived or, you know, stressed. Because that's where I was at a certain point. And just hearing you now, it definitely sounds like you are the example of that. Like, okay, everybody, okay, just do what Veronica has done. Okay. Financial peace and wellness, getting out of debt, and then being wealthy, you know, creating assets and wealth so that, again, you can give back, be that super social worker, all of the things. So Veronica, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you sharing your experience and your time. Okay, everybody, thanks for being here. As always, you can dream, be, do, or have anything you want, but it starts with your mindset. So make sure it's a rich one. See you in the next video.